Make $10,000 from home anywhere in the world, and most likely you've probably never even heard of something like this. And if you haven't, feel free to hit the like button. So cricket farming is already a thriving business in Asia, Africa, South and Central America. And in those areas of the world, people raising crickets are earning an average $5,000 to $10,000 net. And that's in areas where the average gross income is under $6,000, which means if you're in the United States, right, you could actually probably make an okay living, especially if you are close to places where it's easier for you to actually sell those crickets. But we'll get more into that later on in the video. So people and businesses have been breeding crickets as food for chickens, reptiles, and fish for 70 years. Right now, the insect farming market is growing by more than 20% annually. The insect farming business is shifting to expanding its niche in the human food markets, and they are packed with protein for their size. According to the North American Coalition for Insect Agriculture, the NACIA, crickets as human food are high protein and can be prepared by cooking or by being ground into flour. The flour becomes a high protein ingredient in various food such as tortilla chips and protein bars, and you can probably actually see this at your local GNC or Walmart. So what is cricket farming? Simply put, a cricket farm raises them for sale. The most common end use is a live animal feed. They can be fed to chickens, other birds, fish, and various reptiles. The size of a farm can range from 1,000 to hundreds of thousands, and there are about a dozen large-scale cricket farms in the US, and some of those have been in operation for 3 generations. So how do cricket farms actually make money? Cricket farms make money by raising crickets and then selling them. They can sell them live or even frozen. Crickets that are headed for processing in the human food industry are harvested by freezing, and those that are used in the pet industry are sold live. That's because the majority of the pets that are fed crickets won't eat dead ones. The initial outlay to get started would be spending from $15 to $60 per 1,000 to get started, and the lifespan is only 8 to 10 weeks, and during that time, the females lay from 1 to 200 eggs. So you can see how this could quickly add up. If half of your starter group are females, which are 500, you could have 50,000 plus crickets hatch from their eggs, and you keep enough to have another generation and sell the rest. So live animal feed, the most popular feeder insects. So crickets are truly low-budget critters to raise. The biggest challenge is proper management of heat and humidity. And as insects for live animals, crickets are in greater demand than grasshoppers and ants. So crickets for humans, a low-impact source of protein. So crickets are described as having a nutty or earthy flavor in the human food industry. After they die and are frozen, they are regulated as a frozen food product. There are requirements for labeling and packaging. And crickets are low in fat and high in amino acids and omega-3s, and they pack a lot of protein value in those little bodies. So for human consumption, they are touted as a superfood with health benefits. And they're even eco-friendly. They create very little waste and don't take up nearly as much space as other mainstays of the protein market, such as cattle and swine. And then there's the cricket flour. Flour is the most thriving part of the crickets for the human food industry. According to studies, 100 grams of the product, more powdery than regular flour, has 2 times as much protein as 100 grams of steak. And 100 grams of cricket flour has 21 grams of protein. And is pricey compared to standard flours at $35 per pound. The bait. Anglers use crickets for bait for catching fish, and crickets sold as food for pets are usually sold at about 3 weeks old. And at that age, they are small enough to be eaten by small reptiles, even small lizards. When they are more than 5 weeks old, their exoskeletons become tougher and coarser, and that's when they prime for anglers because the outer skeleton is stout enough to hold a hook. But that's when some pet outlets won't take them because they're too big for smaller reptiles. So how profitable is actually cricket farming? So here's an example. You purchase your starter crickets, paying $50 for 1,000. Half of those 1,000 are female, so the 500 females each lay 100 eggs. If you successfully incubate half of those 50,000 eggs, you'll be raising 25,000 crickets. You keep 5,000 crickets to raise another generation. You sell 20,000 crickets at $50 per 1,000. And the cost of equipment needed is low, and we'll go over that later on, and it costs little to feed crickets. There are, of course, variables to these numbers, and what if you don't have any outlet to sell the crickets? Do you mess up the incubation process, or there are fluctuations in temperature and humidity, and your crickets pass away? What cricket species should I invest in? So the best species is the banded cricket, Qriket sigillatus, which is also the most common type. Another popular species is Acheta domesticus, or house cricket. However, these house crickets can get a deadly virus, which can wipe out all the other crickets. So how much does it cost to start a cricket farm? If you're starting with 1,000 crickets, the approximate cost for equipment is about $200, and you can adjust that number times each 1,000 you buy as starters. Large-scale farmers advise newcomers to start small, and your biggest challenge is not raising the crickets, it's having a ready market for them quickly. The window of the time for selling live crickets is short. They are sold from 3 to 8 weeks old, and their lifespan is only about 10 weeks. From 8 to 10 weeks old, the insects are primarily sold as bait. So how to start a do-it-yourself cricket farm on a large scale? Things you need to raise crickets. You need a container to house the crickets. The most common size container is 14 gallons, which holds 500 crickets. You need a heat lamp to control the temperature, thermometers, and humidity meters. Humidity meters can be purchased online or at a pet shop. You could always just check out Amazon. The cost to start with 1,000 crickets is 4 of the 14-gallon bins or cricket tote. You need one for each group of 500 plus an empty one for hatching. These can be purchased as any box store at a cost of $5 to $10 each. 4 heat lamps, heat lamp replacement bulbs, for thermometers, for moisture meters, approximately $200 total. Security the cricket home, how to get started. Find a reputable supplier for your starter crickets, and these suppliers are valuable sources of advice and information. Set up your bins, buy the kind with the top, cut out approximately half of the top and cover that opening with screening. Glue or duct tape the screening to the lid and also create a ventilation hole on each side, also covered with screening. Provide a layer bedding, and most use vermiculite. Vermiculite will also help with odor control, laid in about 1 to 2 inches deep. Crickets love to hide using cardboard egg cartons that is turned upside down, so provide them in the bins. Make sure to maintain the temperature at 85 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Keep humidity levels at about 50%. And if you see condensation on the sides of the containers, the humidity level is too high. Supply cricket foods such as bread, cornmeal, and bran in their diet. Now buying the crickets. Crickets begin to breed when they're about 4 or 5 weeks old, so you want starter crickets that are young to make sure they'll breed. Most suppliers would not rely on the USPS for timely delivery with ground shipping, so to ensure the crickets arrive healthy and warm, your options are overnight or second-day tier, and you can also purchase from Amazon, Petco, eBay, Josh's Frog, Bass's Cricket Ranch, Buy Feeder Crickets. Now telling the difference, make sure there are enough female crickets. Fortunately, it is easy to tell the females from the males. The female has an extension from the rear part of the body. The extension looks like a needle, and that's what they use to lay their eggs. Kinda creepy. Feeding. What do crickets eat? Crickets need a lot of water but can drown in water. That's why water is provided using a wet sponge or cloth, or in a shallow dish. In their diet, the insects will eat plant-based items such as cucumbers, squash, and carrots, and they'll eat corn or bran meal or grainy bread. When they're newly hatched, it's good to add protein to the diet such as tofu. That's because the young crickets need protein as they build their exoskeleton. Now building the maternity area. The importance of an area for crickets to lay eggs. Fill a shallow tray with topsoil, spray the soil with water daily to keep it moist. The breeding and the egg-laying period lasts about 2 weeks, and once the females lay their eggs, you'll see things that look like tiny grains of rice. You can move this shallow tray to another bin where you'll incubate them, and then you can incubate the eggs by using the humidity and temperature are of utmost importance. For incubation, the humidity level should be from 90 to 100%, and you gotta spray the soil in the tray daily. The crickets should hatch from 7 to 10 days, and they are hatched fully formed but tiny. So raising the baby crickets. The humidity can be a little lower, from 80 to 90%, and the baby crickets can eat what the adults eat, but you should add a protein source such as tofu as they grow and their exoskeletons develop, and they also like the egg cartons for shelter. Do not let any adult crickets inside the raising area, and bigger crickets will cannibalize little crickets. Also, be vigilant against spiders. Now, harvesting the crickets. If the crickets are to be used for human food, they can be harvested from 6 to 10 weeks. Since they are very susceptible to variations in temperature, you can remove the heat source, and the crickets will quickly succumb to that change and can be easily gathered. They can be counted into freezer bags and frozen. Starting the cycle again. To restart the cycle, keep some of the crickets you raise. How many you keep depends on the growth of your business and predicted sales markets. So where to sell the crickets? One huge consideration about where to sell crickets is how to deliver the crickets. If your business is local, you can arrange for customer pickup or delivery. You might also look into how to sell at a farmer's market. And if you're going to ship crickets, you'll need to take special cautions to make sure the crickets stay warm enough in transit. Now, on an e-commerce site, you can set up an online store and sell your crickets that way. Now, you could use Craigslist, and you can also provide your email address there. You can also promote your business using a newsletter or blog. And using a newsletter or blog keeps your customers up to date about your business and helps spread the word. Now, you can also sell crickets on social media. You can set up a Facebook page to promote your sales. If you get established with a pet store, you can ask them to add a link to your page on their homepage. You can also ask your source for the starter crickets to provide a link. Now, this can be helpful to all because it can help with shorter times for regular ground delivery. So, selling to pet stores as animal feed. You need more inspiration to raise crickets? Well, here's an example to show you just how many they may need. Bearded dragons grow very fast when they're young, and a bearded dragon from 1 to 3 months old need 450 crickets a week. They must be small, about 1 1/8 inch long, and are fed at 25 to 60 at a time, 3 times a day. When the bearded dragon is 3 to 9 months old, they eat 40 to 65 medium ones 2 times a day. And after 9 months old, the bearded dragon will eat 50 to 70 medium-sized per week. The bearded dragon needs to eat while it's offered for sale in the pet store, and it needs to eat when someone buys it, so the pet store owner replaces the sold bearded dragon with another one. And just like that, the cricket demand has doubled. So selling crickets as pets. Many people like the sound of a cricket, and they are thought to bring luck to a home. For that reason, they can be sold along with a small cage and instructions about food and water. The caveat is that the cricket lifespan is only about 10 weeks. The pros of cricket farming. Small space needed to raise, little financial outlay to get started, sustainable, rich in protein, less demand on land and water resources, and now the cons of cricket farming. Temperature and humidity requirements are specific. If you make a mistake, you can wipe out hundreds or thousands. As human food, they can trigger allergic reactions, which are most likely in people who are allergic to crustaceans, such as shrimp and lobster. And in large numbers, they are very noisy, extremely noisy, so try to set up in the spare room of your condo or some other place, and your neighbors would not be pleased. And in large numbers, they have an odor. One way to combat this is to keep the bedding clean and don't reuse it for successive groups. So basically swap it out each time. Now, things to avoid. Keep adult populations separate from the newly hatched. Be careful about providing water. They can drown in a water dish. If you're feeding leftovers, such as squash or carrots, don't give them any food that you have spiced. Eating food that has been spiced can kill them. If you feed leftovers, watch carefully for rotting, remove any leftovers that are rotting or have fungus, and watch for signs of spiders such as webs. The bottom line, a cricket farm is a great starter business and can be a home-based business and is also a great business for family involvement. So how long does it take for cricket eggs to hatch? Cricket eggs will hatch in about 7 to 10 days. And how long does it take to grow crickets? They only live for 10 weeks, and they are sold at as young as 3 weeks when they are about 1 to 8 inch long. And how do you keep crickets alive? They have simple needs for food and water, and the most critical part of their care is making sure temperature and humidity levels are correct. Feel free to watch more either ways to make money or personal finance related content. Check out 40inbox.com to learn how to master your money. You could also go down below to learn how to master your money right now. and we'll see you in